Gentlemen, welcome to the Be the Man podcast. I'm your host, Greg Denning. I'm the creator and coach inside the Be the Man Masterclass and Tribe. Today, my guest is my friend Jacob Hiller. We crossed paths multiple times as we were out traveling the world, and he is the creator of the Jump Manual and has sold millions of copies of his book. But his story is absolutely inspiring and instructive as he became obsessed with jumping, but not just jumping. It was the idea of peak performance. Like, how do we get this so dialed in and then replicate it? How can I teach others? And so he created the Jump Manual, and his vertical leap and his fitness and his story is super inspiring. But he's also been able to help so many people around the world increase their physical fitness. And so if you're at all interested in physical fitness and vertical jump, as I am, you'll love and appreciate this. But it goes beyond that, because we talk about how those principles of being obsessed with jumping carry over to other areas of life. For one, creating his hugely successful business and then his travel lifestyle, but also how we can take this obsession, this curiosity, this passion, this drive to ask the right questions and find the right answers and bring it into our life. So jump in. I know you're going to enjoy this conversation with Jacob and learn a lot. I learned so much and was super inspired by his story. I know you're going to enjoy this. Let's go. All right, Jacob, thanks for being here, man. Well, it's fun just on a personal note. It's fun catching up with you again, bro. And it's been a lot of years that have been watching your travels and our travels and crossing paths years ago. I had some fun memories, man.
Wasn't that Guatemala?
Yeah, we did. We were out on the lake on the water. You guys had that place right there on the water, man. It's some fun memories, man. Fun memories connecting. But brother, I'm glad to have you here because you've done a bunch of traveling all over the place. So I want to maybe touch on some of that, and business expertise. But let's just back up. Give us a bit of background. Like, how did you get so deep into what you do and jumping? Well, even the whole background, anything's free game. Like, give us your background. How you carved out a space for yourself in the jump world, and it's pretty amazing. So give us some of the background story there.
So when that started going and people started buying our book about how to jump higher, they started buying my book, and it was like, where'd you come up with the idea for this niche and things like that? And to be honest, like since I was a kid, there was just a little obsession. I don't know whether it was watching like dunk videos, but I was like, man, one day I want to get this, and I would buy the boots and I'd buy these training programs, and I lived out in the country on a farm. And so I would get these programs. And then one day when I was on my mission trip, I started kind of cracking the code in the mornings, before I go out doing missionary work, started like doing some exercises, and I'd go out to the playgrounds, and I was finally starting to jump higher. I was finally starting to crack this code, doing these weird exercises. I didn't have much, but I would use like cans of gas, in these countries where you got to use propane tanks. And so I was using propane tanks for my exercise, and I was like, "Oh, this is it."
Wait, hold on. Like, you were holding them and jumping. Like, give us an idea what those exercises look like. You got
exactly. Holding them on my back, jumping and holding them. Yeah.
Yes.
And it was just like I started gathering this theory, and like I'm just that type of person. Like, I just started getting super deep into it, and then I started strapping. Like, when I got home from my mission, I started strapping up like electrodes to myself, and like seeing what muscles fired when I did certain things, and if when I jumped, the same neural patterns were firing. And maybe about 3 or 4 months after I got home, I started kind of getting my head to the rim, and it was like, oh shoot, this is crazy. Turned on YouTube, started talking about it. People asked questions. I didn't even know that there was a whole, other people doing this. I was just like, man, I kind of cracked the code. They're like, man, you need to write us an ebook. So I started writing an ebook, and then next thing I know, it's starting to sell, and then it's starting to sell more, and then suddenly I'm like, would this And then next thing I know, I'm dropping out of school. And it was like, we had sold tens of thousands, and then I'd sold hundreds of thousands of them, up to 100,000 of them. And it was just, yeah, it was unexpected, and just more of a product of an obsession than it was like a strategy or plan. It was like, I've got to figure out how to make a website, got to figure out how to get an affiliate program. And each step was just an awkward first step into new space for me. And so yeah, that's how it happened. And then I ended up just traveling and selling the book, and that's what happened.
Ah, so cool. Man, that's such a cool story. And I want to circle back to several of those things, but I love this idea of like, you just, well, you can even tell you just fell in love with a thing, which a lot of guys do, right? We fall in love with something, we get excited about something. I'm an excitable guy, and I know a bunch of you and a bunch of guys will relate to this. Like, you go to a martial arts gym, and while you're there, you're like, dude, I want to be a ninja. Right? And then you go to the weight room, you're like, I want to be stacked, right? Or you go out on the basketball court or volleyball court, and you're like, I want to jump out of the gym. Like, I always want to dominate. And so we get this excitement, but I think for a lot of people, it kind of fizzles off, right? They'll go a little bit with it here and there, but it goes off.
Yeah.
And I love how you're saying your obsession led you like, I'm going to figure this out.
Yeah.
What was that? What took you deeper, do you think?
I don't know if it's my personality, but I'm just the type of person that, like, I don't know why I never gave up, because like I tried a program and it didn't work, and I got the shoes and it didn't work, and they told me to go run stairs and it didn't work, and it was just like, I don't know why, but I was going to jump high. Like, it just wasn't going to stop. And like, even went into college, and then like, so when it finally started working, I'm like, this is actually getting traction, and it got higher and higher. And like, I'd go back to the gym and people were like, yo, what
Wow.
happened to you?
Yes.
And because I'd be just jumping out of the gym, like get touching my head to the rim and just dunking for, it's just my thing. And yeah, I don't know. It was just, since, I mean, we got videos of me running outside, the moon boots, they have like little trampolines on them, like when I'm like 9 years old. And so like, the strength shoes that had the platforms, like they were too big. They were my brother's, so I would put my actual shoes inside of them.
Inside? Yes.
Yeah, I don't know why. Just I'm just the type of person, I think, that when it's like, and the good thing is it worked,
Yeah.
because maybe it wouldn't have. I don't know, and I'd have just spent all that time. But I was learning stuff. I was always learning. And then when it got to the level of like, okay, you know what? I figured out that you could strap electrodes to yourself. Where do I get one of those? And so I
Yes.
went to Vancouver and bought one of these machines for like $2,000, and just like started strapping stuff on, watching the screen, seeing like the EMG, so it was just like, how far can you take it? So
Man, this is so cool to hear you say this. I didn't know the details of the story, but it's amazing. The guys I keep interviewing, there's these common denominators, and that's one of them. It's like, I'm going to figure this out, and I'm just going to keep pushing until I do. And man, I love that you did that. So just for fun for these guys, because you and I had talked about it before. Tell us how tall you are, and tell us like how high was your vertical when you were like at your peak?
so I'm 6'3", 6'3" or 6'4".
Okay, well, stop right there. So, because some people might be like, maybe he's like 6'7" or something, 6'3", 6'4", and you're getting your head to the rim. Like, that is just
Yeah.
sick.
So like at my height, I was always able to kind of measure my vertical based on how close my head was to the rim. Um, and that's how you also, like, you hear like NBA players jump like 50 inches. Well, if, for example, at my height, 44 inches, 43 inches is like head to the rim.
Yeah.
At 6'3", 6'4", 44 inches. So when you hear that a basketball player like LeBron James, they say, oh, he's got a 46-inch vertical. Just keep in mind, if he jumps 46 inches and he's 6'9", then the rim would be here. You know what I mean? So it gives you an idea of like how high people are really jumping. To be to be 6'9" and jump 46 inches, LeBron James would hit the rim would be at his neck.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was about a 43, 44 inch vertical. And yeah.
That's so awesome. And then,
I didn't figure out the craziest stuff till I was probably 34. So like I figured out a big chunk of it. And then I figured out some more stuff with some bands, like elastic bands that I kind of figured out. And by the time I was 35, I was probably jumping the highest I jumped in my life. And I was like, man, if I had been doing this since I was 19.
20s? Yeah. Oh, awesome. Okay, well, okay, I got all kinds of questions firing here. I want to dive into the things, some of the things you figured out that just work. But what are total sales so far on your ebook? Do you have any guesstimate?
They're probably around 8 million, probably.
8 million
sales. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome, brother. That is so cool, man. So cool. Okay, so share just a couple of things, like those pivot points where it's almost like, I don't know if you're familiar with the it's called the mastery curve or the path of mastery. It's like where you go up, you hit a boost, you go up, and then you're trying to figure things out for a while, and then you hit another boost. And it sounds like your story was kind of like that. Hit something, then you go for a while, and then hit another thing.
Yeah.
What were at those markers where things just like, whoa, I really felt the difference there?
When I was on my mission and I started doing these exercises, and I was like, the exercise has got to look like the activity. And, a lot of that is kind of true for a lot of things in life. Like you get people doing all calf raises and these things, but I realized like the movement that's going to relate to reality has got to look a lot like the movement you're practicing. And so it was like
functional fitness at its best.
Yeah, it was like, right. It was like, and the intensity levels got to go higher. And then I realized like, hey, strength plus the quickness, that's what explosion is when you put the two together. And so I think those were the first moments, but it's hard to pinpoint at what moment I realized that I was an expert at the subject, because I think for a long time, I didn't consider myself to be one. And I don't know that I ever would have had I not like started doing interviews with other people who were considered professionals and starting to think, kind of disagree, you know what I mean? Or like kind of like realizing that I had answers, that were different, or that I liked better, or that these people who you kind of put them on a pedestal of like they're absolutely, astronomical experts. They know so much more. And then you realize like, actually no. And I don't know when I transitioned from
that's huge
enthusiast to the guy who had the answers for everybody to maybe I know more about this subject than anybody else in the world. Something else that's interesting about being an expert, so to speak, is like like how you qualify for it, how you just keep gathering. If somebody would have given me my plan that I did and said, hey, go do this plan, and it would have worked, I wouldn't have been qualified to teach it the way I do.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like the struggle, the needing to like figure out why that doesn't work, qualified me to get in front of people. They ask me a question and speak with, authority about why things work or don't work. And when somebody gives you a plan and says, go do this, and it works, well, it's hard for you to feel the authority to teach that plan. And so I find that sometimes, like when I learn a new thing, I'm a little reticent to want to take a plan, even though I know it'll make my life easier. Because when I get through my own struggle, do my own stupid things, make my own failures, you also just like have this qualification for understanding why and what works, what doesn't work. So I have a certain respect for getting there on my own.
Right.
Even though I'm like, some of the stuff I'm like, man. And sometimes I look back on the stuff and I'm like, hey, people were teaching this thing in another way, but I couldn't understand it until I came up with my own name for it, came up with my own process for it. Sometimes people be like, yo, what you said has been invented already. But it didn't matter because I invented it. You know what I mean?
Right.
I had my name for it, and I had my discovery for it. So I don't know whether it's always smart to just take your own path and not take outside information, and that wasn't really my plan. I was just kind of that guy, but yeah.
There's something to be said there about the trial and error personal experience. Like when you get your hands on it and you work through it, and you're in love with it, you're pushing, you're willing to push through the failure and the successes, and come out with your own story. Like there's something to be said for that. I feel that way about travel. I'm sure you have too. It's like you like my buddies. Okay, well, I was just thinking of you the other day because you guys spent a bunch of time in South Africa, right? And our friends just flew in from South Africa. They were just down there, and they were telling us all the most epic stories about South Africa. But I've never been, and so I'm hearing this. I'm seeing their pictures. And it's great. But when you go to a place, like now you're like, I got this. And so you and I, we talk about Guatemala, and I can immediately picture, oh yeah, where you were on that little village on the hill over the lake, right? And it fills in. There's something to be said about your own personal experience with it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
man, that's so cool. So you're well, give us some of those exercises. I know, I mean, and I highly recommend your manual. And everyone should get the manual if you have any desire to jump for basketball or volleyball, whatever. I mean, when you and this is the coolest thing, and you can explain this, like when your body is able to do things that you want it to do and it responds, that is the coolest feeling. It is the coolest feeling. And I know the guys listening will understand that. Like when you pay a price to work on any part of your body, and then, I mean, you can just be getting up from the couch and like everything's tight, and you're like, oh, I got but like, or you can wrestle with your kids still, right? When your body does that, it's the most incredible feeling. So what started to work, man?
So when I came down to it, so the jump manual is about 9 different variables. And when people are like, hey man, show me, I tell them the big 3. And the big 3 for jumping higher are strength, because without strength, you can't move weight. And if you can't move weight, you can't move it fast. So you got to be strong. You got to have a certain amount of strength. Then you got to have quickness. And quickness is really about your brain. It's about your central nervous system. And it's about a skill. Jumping is a skill. Just like some people can snap their fingers with their left hand, they can't with their right, or vice versa. It's not that your right hand is stronger, or if you throw a baseball, you can throw a baseball way faster with your right hand than your left hand. Not that your left hand is stronger. It's that the nervous system skill, the skill set of firing your muscles and orchestrating them in a certain pattern. Exactly. And you do that through repetition. And so the central nervous system quickness is part of that. You put the strength together and the neural pattern together, and now you got explosiveness. If you're only strong, maybe you can push weight, but you can't push it fast. So you got to learn how to use the strength that you have within this skill set, this neural pattern. So, I mean, jumping is like snapping your fingers or throwing a baseball. It's a neural pattern that you groove, and you groove it with your strength. So so that's technique. So those 3 things all together, your technique, your strength, and that neural pattern, they work together. Those are the big 3. And so,
oh, cool.
Yeah,
it's so cool. And well, I love that you just explained that. Sorry, I like to geek out about this stuff too. Quickness, because you'd think, well, where does quickness come from? Is it a different type of muscle? Is it a different body part? But I love what you're saying there. It's like it's the central nervous system and its neural patterns, and you're literally training your brain and your body to work in conjunction to do something.
That's right.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So one thing that, the last stuff that was working faster and better than anything else is I would take a barbell and I would put bands hanging from the barbell. So a little bit of weight, and I'd put the barbell, and I'd take bands and I'd hang them down and strap them to like a few kettlebells so they couldn't move, or an anchor if I had them. So now you have the resistance element, right? But if you take a phone, for example, you throw this phone in the air, it takes inertia. Or if you drop your hand, the phone stays in the air for a second and drops, right? When you got the bands, you can't escape the resistance of the bands. So it's pulling down on you faster than gravity, much
Yes.
faster than gravity. So when you get in the jump position and you're going through the exact same joint angles, because your strength needs to be at the specific joint angles that you jump. Strength is specific to your joint angle. So you got the barbell on you, it's pulling on you faster than gravity. And then when you drop down into the jumping position, now you're not escaping that weight for a second and experiencing no resistance. So you're experiencing an eccentric resistance no matter how fast you drop down. And then when you push back to your explosive phase, now you're pushing against a resistance that is not only strong, but it's fast. And so when the resistance is fast, that means your body is firing fast. And so bands, they give you an opportunity to train faster than gravity. And so if you're doing that at a high resistance, if you're doing that pushing a strong neural drive, then now you're training your body's joint angles, you're training it in high resistance, you're training it with a specific movement, and you're training it to fire. Like if you had that screen hooked up and you had the EMG machine firing, you'd see, hey, all the right joint angles and muscles are firing. They're just firing faster, and they're just firing at greater amplitudes than they were if you're training with dead weight. So that's sport specific, faster than gravity, high resistance, and always training the movement is going to get you somewhere jumping.
Oh man, this is so cool. And I'm, in my mind, I'm always looking for applicable lessons to life, and you're hitting so many of them. It's like these formulas, right? It's like a Venn diagram. What you have here is like there's this Venn diagram for what's for jumping, right? Strength, quickness, technique, and getting the right angle and training that way, right? So that you create this Venn diagram, and then the sweet spot, you just nail it. But when I love that you said that you can train faster than gravity, right?
Yeah.
That. Then you find the system like, wait a minute, how can I just absolutely maximize what I'm trying to learn? And there's tricks to doing this with memorization. There's tricks to doing this with, well, whatever, anything you want, business, relationships, health and fitness, like mind, emotion, spirit, like whatever, like what's the formula? And then how do we get there like explosively, right? How do you get there quickly and figure this stuff out? Man, I love this. Really love this.
Yeah.
How quickly can people come to you all the time, and you've worked with so many students. How quickly can people see improvements?
There's something that happens if you're a new athlete and you've never really trained this way. I mean, you could start to realize inches, in months. And it's because some of those gains, you got gains in different ways.
Yeah.
You got gains that come from your muscles breaking down and building back up. And that's a process that takes time, right? But you also have gains from learning tricks, techniques. Like, for example, a lot of people don't know that when you jump, you should take a long step followed by a short step, because the long step drops your body down lower. Your legs are longer, so your body drops lower. And when you perfect that, you create a better technique. You kind of create a trampoline effect when you jump. So the technique work, you could gain 3 to 6 inches. Some people can gain 3 inches in a day because they're learning how to jump better, just like they're learning how to shoot better. It's a technique, it's a mechanical advantage through a mechanical strategy. So then you have your central nervous system work. And that over time, you groove a stronger neural pattern, just like throwing a baseball. Like, for example, if you never knew how to throw a baseball, you could turn a corner where you figure out how to orchestrate your body the right way. Now you got a new neural groove, and your strength can start pouring into that new neural groove. So your central nervous system work can also sometimes click, and you could get 3 to 6 inches, pretty quick. Then once you get past your beginner gains, you've mastered the movement, you've mastered the technique, then you're on the long road. You're on the long road. So like you're going to gain your 3, 6, 8 inches. Now you're going to be at a high level, right? But if you want to get to elite levels, you literally got to buckle up, and you got to be ready for, years of this. Because people are like, hey, why did my vertical go down? Well, that's because you're training the right things. If you if you don't have dips, you're not training the right thing. If I train my hand to get stronger, it's not going to affect my vertical negatively, right? But if so training your hand has nothing to do with jumping. But when you train exactly the right muscles, the next day you're going to take a dip. Yeah. And that dip means train the right thing. Exactly. You know what I mean? So it's like once you get past those, those initial easy milestones, you got to be ready to grind. And the grind will mess with you. Is this working? And then it's incremental. It's like, hey, you've gained maybe 6, maybe 9 inches. But if you want to gain, 12, 10 plus inches, you got to be getting like, these type of gains, right? And and over time, those little bitty gains, when you're consistent, they just pile up. Yeah. And after a while, you realize, holy crap, I've reached a level. And so the best way to get there is to everyday track. And like every single day, I do a max jump, grooving the neural pattern, figuring out what my baseline is, right? And then one day it's like, oh, never touch that. We have this, and this is kind of applicable in life. I taught all my guys, like, you got to have a mojo, and it's an object just out of reach. My object just out of reach, my mojo, right? My object just out of reach. So it's like, and I told guys, listen, if you're not reaching for your mojo, then I don't have any guarantee for you, because unless you're reaching every single time you execute, then you're not going to be pushing towards that ceiling. You're going to be going through the motion, and jumping is not something you can go through the motion for. You can't jump 1,000 times and jump higher. Nope. It's an intensity level improvement thing. So if you don't, what I would do is I'd always have a measuring tape, or I'd stick something to the ceiling, and I'd know, okay, that's my mojo. I can touch it. Now I got to touch it with my knuckle. Now I got to touch it with my fist. Now I got to touch it with my, so it's just always keeping it just out of reach, because jumping, like I said, it's an intensity level thing. It's not an endurance thing at all. You have to always be pushing new levels of intensity.
Oh man, bro, you are throwing down the object lessons for life here. Yeah, you're spot on. That's so applicable to life. And I love the research, the science, the common sense backs that up. If you just go through the motions of it, it won't make a difference. Yeah. You have to do it right, and you have to do it with intensity. You have to be reaching, you have to be chasing something.
Yeah. Man, you know what's crazy is, like, these things, like in school, it was like we had a coach and he could dunk, right? And what did he do? Hey, you run stairs. You run stairs. You don't run stairs to jump higher. And it's just crazy that at these high levels, and like, what did Michael Jordan do? Michael Jordan says, well, I rode my bike a lot. So what do people say? Gotta ride your bike. You don't ride your bike to jump higher. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So it's just funny that, like, what I'm saying seems so common sense, yet go out there in the world and people are telling you. And I had a summer where I ran stairs like my life depended on it, because I was like, hey, this guy can do what I want, right? He says run stairs. Boy, I was running stairs, and didn't work. But it's just crazy. Like, the things that I say now, they seem almost common sense when I say them, but for a lot of people, they're going down a wrong road. Yeah. They're going down a back alley, and so
another great life lesson, because it's not all that common. It's definitely not common practice, right? That's awesome. Yeah. That is so. And then what you were saying, emphasizing again, like, once you get past the big gains, right, which happens to all of us, we get into something new and exciting, and you're like, yeah, this is awesome. You get the burst, and man, you get the endorphins and the rush. You're like, this is so cool. I'm making the gains. But then you're right. If you want to go to elite levels in anything, then it's just, you got to put in the work for a long time. Yeah. And the little gains will stack. Yeah. But too many people pull out because they're like, dude, I worked so hard for that. Like that half inch. Like,
I know.
It's not enough. That's not enough. I'm out. Yeah. And they stop.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what, Greg, I don't know the secret. Like, I wish I knew, like, what got me through those cold winters, so to speak. Yeah. Like, because sometimes, like, even though I'd done it before, when I'm 30 years old, I'm no longer this 26-year-old. I'm like 34 years old, and like, it took me months, 6 months to get to that elite level again. And then a year, and just kept going. But like the first time I did it, I don't know what it was. It was like, hey, keep going. Hey, keep going. I really don't know what it was. But I know that once I did it once, it certainly helped to be like, and it was still hard. There were still times I was like, is this working? Is this working?
Yeah.
And then one day your gains sneak up on you. And I think that's true in life too. It's like suddenly you're like, you get that day and it's like, oh shoot, it's working. And that's like that little gift that keeps you going in the hard times too.
Oh my goodness, that is so good. Man, it makes me think, because I get to coach people every day, so do you. And I just keep thinking, like, whatever it is we're chasing, whatever it is you want, if you can stay hungry and take this same model you're talking about, don't just listen to the whatever, ride your bike, run the stairs.
Yeah.
Like get
Yeah.
the little stuff and then stick with it. And the days you don't feel like it, well, do it anyways. And then the gain will sneak up on you one day and you'll be like,
Yeah.
what? That just popped out of nowhere. And it seems like
It's
seems
working.
so lucky. And it's working. And then you get your reward and then back to work.
Yeah. You know what's crazy, and with jumping, like people would get my program and like all the stuff that I'm telling you is in the book, right? And then they would send me, hey, it's not working for me. And they'd send me their videos, right? And I look at their videos and I'm just thinking to myself as I'm watching their videos and they're doing their exercises, and I'm just like, what are you reaching for? I'm like, I don't know how many times I say in the book, if you don't reach a certain, I call it the improvement zone. In the jump manual, I call it the improvement zone. And I show people like, if your training is always at this level, right below the improvement zone, you can do more of it, and more of it doesn't matter. If you don't touch the improvement zone level of intensity, you never get the super compensatory effect that your body's looking for. Period. And so like I'd see people come send me their videos and I'm like, I'm sorry, but you just not going hard enough. You're not hitting the intensity level. You know what I mean? And you can see it. I'm like, first of all, what are you reaching for? And how often have you touched it? When's the last time you touched your mojo? Yeah. You haven't touched your mojo. You don't even have a mojo. You're not even reaching for your mojo. And if you don't, I can't help you. You can't help yourself, because it's not like a marathon running or losing weight. Like you literally, like there'd be nights like every night to be like, here we go. I'd be in my head about it, just like this time, this jump right here is going to be the one. Nope. This jump right here is going to be the one. Nope. And you know what I mean? It's just like you gotta bring it each one.
This is huge. So even if you get to the point where you're doing the right thing the right way, you've got to have the mojo. You've got to get improvement. I love that, improvement zone intensity. Like, are you willing to just put it all on the table right now and be like, let's go for this moment?
Yeah, because if you don't hit that, with jumping, because it requires your central nervous system to spike at a higher level than it's ever spiked. It requires your muscles to be taxed at a level that induces the super compensatory growth effect. So in order to hit both of those levels, you have to hit a certain intensity level. And if you don't hit it, you just can't grow. You just can't do it.
So awesome. That's so awesome. Let's kind of shift into the business aspect of it and take these things. Like, I love, you just started throwing things on YouTube and there was a response to it. Then you wrote your book and you got sales from there. And you kind of referenced earlier, you had, each awkward first step. Because I know you facilitated business growth. I mean, there was a lot, it just started going because results don't lie, man. So you got results for yourself and results for others. Well, that just takes off. But then what were some of those business strategies that worked for you? What worked in business to really get explosive growth?
Yeah. I think that the first thing that really worked for me was every piece of content that I made was for somebody. So when I would make a YouTube video, people would ask these questions. So I've had times where like maybe I talk about a video because it's interesting or I think that the content is impactful, right? But the way I created my content was like every single video is directed at some single person, some real person who had a question about something. And so I think making videos and content that was focused on certain people, every single thing, somebody else was going through that struggle. And so I think that was a big thing. It's just like, hey, figuring out how to release content that impacted one person and having a flow for that, not overthinking it. Like my production quality was never the highest, but the content that I produced always helped one person. And somebody on there would be like, yo, that's my question. And then, there'd be others. I looked at my channel the other day and I'm astounded that there's still some of my stupid videos are still just like I made this video about how to palm a basketball. Some kid want to know how to palm a basketball. Like I had gone through that struggle. And like that video turns out to be one of my biggest videos ever. So just making content that isn't what we think is cool, but is resonating, is going to touch one person was helpful.
That's massive. You're speaking to, well, what it does, it keeps you speaking to people, to a person. It's not this
Yeah.
objective crowd. You're like, hey, brother, I'm talking to you. And then it resonates. It kind of changes the voice and the tone,
Yeah.
and that's powerful.
Right. Yeah. Because it can be easy, like your topic can be easy. Be like, okay, I'm going to talk about such and such thing. And maybe it'll impact somebody, but sometimes we're talking to ourselves at that point and we don't know, but what I would do is I would just make a list of every question I had, right? I'd turn on the camera and I'd answer one question and then I'd clap. And I'd answer another one and I'd clap and I'd answer another one. And in an hour, I'd have, 20 pieces of content.
Yeah.
And I'd just cut all those up, distribute them, have somebody transcribe them, write them on the blog, distribute them to every site I could. And so it was just like, and then once I answered those questions, 100 more questions came in. And after a while, I was like, man, I feel like I've answered every single question in this marketplace. And then that's where it was challenging to me, Greg, is it was like, okay, I've answered this question 500 times, but people are still asking it. And so you just,
see, I'm curious right there. Then what? When you've answered it?
Yeah, you know what? You just keep addressing people. For me, I just keep addressing people. And somebody who I think is the master at this is, I don't know if you've heard of the knees over toes guy. Yep. But he's an interesting guy. I love him because like when I was in 2000, like 8, 9, like I was telling people, hey, when you jump, guess what happens to your knees? They go over your toes. And at this time, it was like people were like, never squat over your toes, right? And so like I kind of got in the fire for people saying, hey, you can't do that. And I was like, well, look at your jumping. If you don't train for that position, you're just going to be vulnerable in it. And I love that this guy took that concept on his own and he made that his USP. He made that his unique position. But if you look at his videos, I swear he talks about the same thing every single video.
Yep.
But like it's engaging and like he talks about it with passion and like he's just doing it every day. And I think like, and you see what he's been able to accomplish athletically too. And like he just shows that like, hey, he just shares his grind. And I think that's what it was for me too. Is just like, I was doing it every day. And so, sharing like, hey, you gotta, embrace, the struggle and just keep addressing people.
And yes, man, living what you're teaching. One of the things I love to say is like, if you don't live the message, then you just suck as the messenger. Right. And so like, I love it. Just sharing your own grind, staying in it, going after it. And then, yeah. And there is this repetition, but it can still be engaging and people still the passion, hear the message. And I can see this genuine desire you have to help people reach their goals. If they want to jump, man, you're like, I can help you do that. And that's a cool thing.
It's funny because like it's jumping, but it became a platform for like, I don't know. I just felt like, I got to touch people in certain ways. And like, even though it's just jumping, like it's just anything, you know, everything you do is just anything. And so how you approach it and how you get to touch people and like even just the nuances of how you speak to people, like it became something where I felt like I had a tribe and, you know, like I had a platform to just yeah, it's just interesting that like that became my tribe. Those people became my people. And you know, they would send me messages and like, oh my gosh, you have no idea what you did. I'm gonna name my child after you know, you get these like kids who dunk for the first time. Like I had kids be like, I'm gonna name my child after you. And they're totally serious, you know?
That's awesome, man. Yeah, and you build a community around it. You get your tribe of people, you connect, you're helping people reach their goals. You're right. That's a great point, man. You could say, oh, it's just jumping or it's just anything. But if you're helping people reach the things they want, if you're helping people, well, this is the classic Zig Ziglar. Like to get the things you want, help people get the things that they want. And that's what you've done, man.
Yeah. And they were just every one of those people was me. I was like, man, I know what it's like to be that kid. And for some reason, the jumping obsession, I don't know if you ever had it, Greg,
Oh
but
yeah.
man, I don't know what gave it to me, but I was just like, it was the thing. I was like, to float like that, to fly like that, that's the thing.
Yeah.
And now that I'm older, I'm just like, you know, it's not quite as important to me to reach those levels and to jump like that. Like I had surgery on my bicep. You know, I've aged, you know, I've gone through pains and I'm at a different stage in my life. But I look back on it, I'm just like, man, how amazing was it that that was it for me?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That was everything. That was at one point my life,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Oh, it's so cool. No, I did. I played volleyball. We had a sand volleyball court in the backyard, and then I got on a junior Olympic team, and then even played a little bit in college level. And so, yeah, I was obsessed, same with jumping. And I had at one point had a high vertical. I love it. That feeling of just
People.
popping and like, oh yes, I'm gonna smash this.
Yeah.
The feeling's
Right. And I
amazing.
think maybe it's jumping because like somehow you feel like when you can overcome that you're greater than human. I don't know if that's what it is. I don't know why that thing, you know. And you know, it could take a lot of the people who I had it was for basketball, but then we had people like didn't know badminton. Jumping was a big deal in badminton. I had a whole Chinese group of people always coming to me. I had people who did um, ice skating, and it was a big thing like jumping for ice skating. I had people who did it for parkour training. So it's like I didn't realize like I
Cool.
was always doing it for basketball, but there was this whole I had a baseball team was like, can you come teach us to jump for baseball? I'm like, I don't know. At the time I was like, they're like, well, we noticed that our highest jumpers are our hardest hitters because it's the same
Whoa,
power there. And I'm like, all right.
that's incredible. That's super cool. Well, oh man, my son does parkour. He's a stuntman now. I don't know if you know Parker's doing stunts full
Oh,
time. Yeah,
really?
he's a professional
Oh,
stuntman
cool.
here in Atlanta.
Wow.
And he does the parkour, but yeah,
Doesn't surprise me.
yeah, right. He just gets into it. But and the kid is jumping and jumps a ton and it makes a huge difference in the things he's able to do, which is really cool.
Yeah,
I love that.
yeah.
So,
I mean,
okay,
for
man.
me, like I glorified it for me. I always said that, hey, jumping is the most athletic thing a human being can do, and it informs every other athletic or non-athletic thing you do with your body. So that's how I glorified it to me, and I still believe that to a high degree that it's like, hey, we're not just training to jump higher, we're training the most elite type of movement, the most complex type of movement that requires all your systems, your strength, you know, your tendons, everything. So like yeah, that's in my mind, it was like, this is the ultimate human, you know, achievement.
And it's like, but and you're fighting like gravity. So I
Yeah.
love it. And it's that combination of you have to want it and then have the strength and the technique and the explosion, right? And the quickness. And it takes the time and training. And then you're defying gravity to a point of like, I'm seeing how high I can get off the earth with my own
Yeah.
efforts. Dude, there's some cool life lessons right there, man. I love that.
Yeah, man.
Let's just touch for a moment, like what how succeeding in your passion since you were a kid, man, just chasing this down and working through it. And it sounds like you didn't grow up thinking, "Oh, I'm going to make this my business." Like, but it
Yeah.
became your business. How did success then play out to other areas of your life? Like, I know one was traveling like crazy, investments, like just share a little bit of like some of the side benefits of chasing greatness.
Yeah, from an actual perspective, it's like one of the first problems I had was like, hey, how am I gotta figure out a website. So like I had to figure that out. And I'm the type of person who was gonna do it on my own. And then it was like, oh, now I gotta figure out how to do customer support. I've got thousands of people and I'm overwhelmed by email. And I think about like, how could I do this? And then so like one thing led to another. So then it was like ebooks. Like when I was doing this, ebooks were not easy.
Yeah.
And so I created an ebook software. And so they just led me, and I've noticed that's the pattern, like not know how to do something, get obsessed about it. My passion then pours over to sharing it with other people and then selling it. And for me, that's kind of my pattern is like figure something out and then I understand the struggle. And it's not until I understand the struggle that I really feel like I start really helping people. And I think so in a weird way, I don't know if it's being stupid or hard headed, but being someone who struggles with things somehow always qualifies me to get to the next step. Whereas like if I'd have just had somebody build my website or if I'd have just had somebody do the customer support. Um, so it's almost like going the hard path, figuring it out on my own always would qualify me for what I was going to do in my next step. So almost everything I did was, something I created to overcome a struggle. And then that struggle qualified my passion to be like, other people are struggling with this. Um, that's why even now today, like there's so many good tools out there for us, but there's no tools out there that'll go help you struggle.
Yeah.
And sometimes you need that struggle just to qualify. And so I'm always just grateful for the struggle, even though I never am in the moment. Um, I'm just grateful for the struggle and grateful for having seen so many things to fruition. And then you just realize, like, hey, is this the grind? Yep, this is the grind. And here we are. And so, just like in jumping, like, you got to bring that intensity and that passion to every day of the grind, or your grind is just going to plane off.
Yeah.
So,
Oh man. That's one of my new favorite quotes right there, brothers. That the struggle is the qualifier, man. It really is. And if
yeah,
at some point, just at this personal level between you and you, are you
yeah,
willing to struggle with something? Are you willing to show up and pay what's on the price tag of whatever it
yeah.
is you want?
And the struggle is a really interesting space, dude, because like we said, if somebody had given me the jump manual when I was 19 and it worked, and I even surpassed the levels of athleticism that I would have never been like, you know what? I'm gonna teach that to the masses. You know what I mean? Never would have crossed my mind. You know
Mm.
what I mean? And when you're in the struggle space, you're in this space where like I had to decide that was my struggle, um, but I could have just said there was a lot of things that I decided that's not my struggle. And so I don't understand, and you probably do being, more of a life coach, like what things qualify to be your struggle? Like, what are you going to wrestle with? And, you got to choose them because when you're there, it's like something in you has to say, that struggle, there's a light at the end of that tunnel. There's not at the end of that one. And so struggle is almost stupidity. You know what I mean? It's almost stupidity. Because I had times where like my brother was like, yo, bro, what are you doing? Like, you're not everybody can dunk, not everybody can do this. Like, what are you doing? Like, just give it up. Like you're just gonna, you're it's not gonna happen. and you're just going to be wasting your time and you're going to disappoint yourself. And so struggle is,
Wow.
yeah,
Right?
struggles that place. It's almost failure. It's
Yeah.
almost stupidity. It's almost waste. It's almost disappointment. And like, I still don't understand it, but I'm somebody who struggles.
Oh man. I'm taking notes here, brother, because there's so many applicable lessons here. You're right. You're right. The struggle it can be failure, it can be waste, it can be disappointment, and sometimes it will be. And each one of us has to choose, like, what am I willing to struggle for? What am I willing to risk? If I go down this path and it doesn't work out, am I still going to be okay that I went down that path? And then is there a potential reward that's worth this struggle, this grind? Am I willing to, maybe I always call it the exchange rate. There's an exchange rate on everything right now.
Yeah.
Like, what will this
Yeah.
cost me in time or effort or resources or whatever? What if I say yes to this, I'm saying no to something else automatically, but is it worth it going down this road?
Yeah.
And man, that's a game changer in life.
Yeah.
So cool.
It is interesting. Yeah.
Oh man, Jacob, this is so cool, man. Thank you for sharing all this. So awesome. Any last thoughts? Anything else that just kind of big takeaways from your experience in business, life, investing, jumping? Anything else you want to share that has been valuable to you?
Things have changed so much since 2006 when I started doing this. We're 2022. Everybody's a content creator. All the things that I struggled to make happen, you can do at the push of a button now. You know what I mean? Like whether it's a website or a strategy, all the technical strategies, which at the time, like I used to teach them, like I got through it. Now I'm like, there's a product for that. It's all easy. Like, so I think, what qualifies us now is to just be connected to our purpose and to be connected to our struggle and to have chosen our struggle, and so, I'm in new iterations of myself too. And so you just got to realize that like things have changed. The game has changed. Things that made me someone who understood things then. If I want to be 60 years old and still on my edge, I've got to let go of all those things that once made me someone who knew what I was doing, and be ready to just let my passion and my grind carve out, who I become. So,
Oh, it's so good, right? The things that got us to where we are, you may have to let go of some of those things and lean into the things that will get you where you want to go. And man, you're so right. The game changes, especially right now.
yeah.
Like, there's never been
Yeah.
a time in the history of the world where things change so rapidly. There's
Yeah.
new technologies coming out all the time. And so
Right.
as the game changes, you must change or you're going to get left behind.
Yeah. I mean, it's changed a lot. And you're right, it changes like it's so quickly. Like
Yeah.
the technologies that I used to do the things I did then, completely different, so much easier. And now the struggles that people are doing now, they're different. And the things that we're trying to orchestrate, they're different. They're on a different they're all the stuff that was then, it's just now it's easy. Everyone knows how to do it. Everyone knows how to be a content creator. Everybody knows how to do a website, promote something, do a launch, and those are things that back in the day, it was like, there wasn't a lot of ways to do it.
Right. And there was a
And
lot
now
of
you got
trying to do it.
options for every single thing that was hard. It's like, oh, well, yeah. So you got to really, yeah.
We have to keep leveling up, keep staying hungry, man. I think just keep following the formula you gave us, and just look at each part of your life there, like that Venn diagram, man, and the formula, just like you said, just figure it out. Like, if whatever it is we want in life, man, figure out the formula and want it. That's my big takeaway from today. Want it with such intensity. Have your mojo and reach for that thing. Just reach, figure out the formula, and
Mojo,
just put in the
man.
price,
Yeah.
and you got it.
In your mojo. Yeah.
And it's
I
like
would just tell, I'd train people like, man, you got, like, I would get fired up. I'd scream, I'd slap myself, like, cause I knew today I got to hit that intensity level or there's no gains. And so I think you're right, Greg. I think you got to approach your day like you approach that jump, and you got to have your goals just out of reach. You got to have it out of reach. And then that day, if you're going to get off the treadmill, you got to run. You got to hit it a little bit harder. I think you're right, man. That is, I think, the takeaway.
So awesome. Thank you, brother. Thanks for being here, man.
Yeah. Thanks, Greg. Thanks for having me.